Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are. How is everyone? Welcome, 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 welcome. Listen, I want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to apologize right off the bat. If you hear noise outside, that is the tree cutters, I think. So it's a little annoying in the background. I don't know how drastic it is for you hearing it, but do let me know if that's how that is for you on your end. How is everyone? Who have we got? You can hear that now. Hello from Sweden. Everyone's doing great. Sounds good. Sounds fine. Perfect. That makes me happy because having to deal with that is crazy. It probably sounds a lot worse where I am compared to it coming through on the microphone and everything. So, listen, thank you all for joining me. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure other people will pop in as they do. So, listen, hey, just want to let you know we are back. What is up, everybody? This is Tommy Earl Jenkins, and welcome back to Joy to the Word, the Death Stranding edition, episode 9. Can you believe it? It is now the ninth of the 10-part series, where we are getting so incredibly close to the end. We are now only 2 episodes away, including today, from the final episode in this series, as we continue diving deep into the world of Death Stranding via the character interviews. Now, I always start by saying it, as I've said before, it's a chance for those of you who've played the game, also for those of you who haven't, to hear some of the backstory, the in-depth information on how some of these characters have come together, how the relationships have been forged, as well as the lore and the history behind Death Stranding, and pretty much how some of these characters have just come to exist in this crazy, tragic, and yet beautiful world. But please be aware that these interviews could have spoilers, especially today. If you haven't played the game, you have been warned, so tread carefully. All of this as we are leading up to the highly anticipated director's cut, which is released on September 24th, which means that release is only 4 days away. It's so exciting. It's like having the game released all over again for the first time, as the hype is real, people. Now, in this episode, I will be covering all of the reports that have been given by Lucy Strand. Now, there are 12 reports, and the reports also include one that by an unknown. In this episode, it will touch on some serious emotional levels, so make sure you've got your tissues handy. Listen, thank you all for joining me. So let's go ahead and get started. How's everyone doing? Everyone good, and everyone can hear me fine. It's all great. It's all great. It's all great. We're gonna have a little bit of a delay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Yes, welcome. Hey, hey, hey. All is good. All is good. Brilliant. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this very first the sort of bio. No, I'm a little hesitant to read some of the stuff in the bio, but because it's going to come in some of the interviews. But as you know, I'm going to re-preface this again by saying this particular episode does contain some serious spoilers. So if you haven't played it, I'm happy for you to sit in and you want to hear all of this information. By all means, just know that it does have some pretty strong spoilers in it. So I am going to go ahead and read this bio, and it's interesting because it will cover some of the stuff that we are going to speak about later on. Anyway, this is Lucy. So Lucy Strand was a therapist who later became Sam's wife, if you didn't already know that, which I'm sure most of you did. Lucy was born sometime before the Death Stranding. At some point, she was a therapist and eventually met Sam through his therapy, attempting to help him overcome his aphantasmophobia and abandonment issues. He tried to convey his dooms and repatriation attributes, associating them with the beach. But Lucy couldn't comprehend the information and insisted that Sam's claims were false. However, after Sam committed suicide in her office during one of their sessions and repatriated soon after, the two fell in love and subsequently got married sometime after. This caused Lucy to resign as a therapist, to which they lived together in an urban residential area of the satellite town of UCA-01-0C. There's an address for you. And at some point during their marriage, Lucy became pregnant with Sam's daughter, which they were planning to name her Lucy, although Sam nicknamed her Lou. However, around her 7th-month pregnancy, Lucy began suffering Doom's nightmares as a result of Sam's condition being passed down to Lou. Bridget, Sam's adoptive mother, tells Lucy that the beach is real and takes her there, confirming her nightmares are real. And at this moment, I'm going to leave it there because I want some things to become a little more clear as we go on. And let's go ahead and start with the very first. I just thought, that all of that is really interesting. And you get a sense of a lot of the stuff that happens between Sam and Lucy, and also their journey. And as tragic as it can be, it's kind of interesting to kind of know that. And especially if you're going back into playing the game, you have a real sense of why he is the way he is, and why he acts the way he acts, and also his motivation for certain things. So, wow, that's a serious drill going on out there. Hopefully that's still okay. You guys still good? So let me go ahead and start with this report. The first one we're going to hit on is, it's the very first one in the list. It's report concerning the void out in the satellite town of UCA-01-0C. So the interview was given by an unknown. The time and place at which it took place is unknown, and its whereabouts, where it took place, is also unknown. So it states, the UCA-01-032 has been wiped off the map by a void out, leaving nothing but an enormous crater. Terrorism was suspected at first, but the investigation, spearheaded by Bridges, quickly ruled out the possibility and eventually concluded that the cause was the corpse of a civilian which had been left to necrotize unnoticed in an urban residential area. The deceased was Lucy Strand. Tragically, she was also 7 months pregnant. The child had already been named Lou. Cause of death was ruled a drug overdose, possibly intentional, though that remains unconfirmed at this time. Surveillance data was sent to Bridges HQ for analysis, but the results were inconclusive. Lucy's husband, Sam Strand, had been away for some time and became concerned when he was unable to contact his wife. Though he attempted to return home, the void out was triggered immediately after his arrival. Being a repatriate, Sam was the sole survivor of the blast. As the deceased was the wife of a prominent member of Bridges, who himself is the son of President Strand, public support for the organization suffered. Many criticized the crisis management team's handling of the situation, as well as the priorities of the organization and President Strand herself. Some believe that Sam Strand was involved with his wife's death and that he should be held to account, while both the administration and Bridges adamantly defended him for a time. Public pressure continued to mount. In a gesture his co-workers suspect was his way of taking responsibility, Sam Strand resigned from Bridges. His current whereabouts are unknown. So that is the start. And I would say it's more like a prologue to all of these reports, which we're about to delve into. it's interesting because that whole void out that it was actually what happened with Lucy, unfortunate, but at the same time, we understand the repercussions of what happens when a body is left to necrotize after dying. Once again, I do apologize for that loud drilling out there. That it couldn't have come at a worse time today. So apologies once again. Some things I have no control over, but we'll plow on through. We'll plow on through. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the very first interview. The report of one. Report one. Now, this was given by Lucy Strand, and there is no time. Recording live construction time. Absolutely. I can't hear the drilling, so it's all good. That's really good. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you very much. Trying to look fresh. I don't feel that fresh, but thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and hit report one. This was given by Lucy Strand, and there is no timestamp on it. That's unknown, or there wasn't even a list for this particular report, or even to as to where it took place. But she states, "I've just concluded my first therapy with Sam Strand. It was not held at the patient's request. Sam's adoptive mother, President Strand, approached me in the hope I might help her son overcome his aphenphosmphobia. Sam is an intriguing case. His reluctance notwithstanding, he recognizes that his condition has and will continue to cause him much distress. I suspect it is rooted in a childhood trauma, but unfortunately, we have only just scratched the surface, and I cannot even begin to speculate what it might be." Like many of the Bridges core team members, Sam is a dooms sufferer. Unlike them, however, he is also a repatriate. Whether or not this is related to his aphenphosmphobia, I cannot say at this time, but he would hardly be the first to manifest phobias as a result of his abilities. As an infant, Sam lost both parents and was adopted by President Strand. Owing to her stress and time-consuming responsibilities, I can only presume that she was unable to afford him sufficient attention, which is to say that a distant relationship with his adoptive mother may be a contributing factor. As previously mentioned, though, Sam is very reluctant to talk about himself. He is an intensely private individual, and it will take time to build trust and convince him to open himself up to me. So, aphenphosmphobia, which I'm pretty sure we mentioned and talked about in previous interviews, it's that fear of being touched by anyone, which we know that Sam always has a problem with. And what a word, aphenphosmphobia. I mean, honestly, great word. Unfortunately, it would be very difficult to have to endure. I think that thing of not fear of being touched. I think, though, unless you are emotionally connected, possibly with something or someone. But yeah, what a great word, and what a tragic thing to also have to endure. What have we got? I can't imagine the toll on Sam, especially after the repatriation. Thanks for yet another stream. This is great. Thank you, Giuliano. I'm sure repatriates suffered in ways that no one else could even imagine. Pro Toaster, I love you too. Thank you. So yeah, I think it's interesting. And she talks about, this was obviously something that began this whole therapy for Sam at the request. It wasn't at his request, but by Bridget. And mainly to help him try and overcome this aphenphosmphobia that he has, hoping that would help his condition. And she seems to think that this is something that comes from a childhood, which is not unlikely. I don't think. I think a lot of things people can have trauma in their life, which stems from one's childhood. A lot of different things. But he also lost both his parents and was adopted by President Strand. And obviously, being someone that she is in her field, it doesn't have much, a lot of time, I suppose, to devote to affection and being able to look after Sam in the way that maybe he needed. So maybe that has a lot to do with the whole fear of not being used to being touched or whatever. But interesting. What are your thoughts here? So we've got, hi, Krauser. Hello, good morning. There is a research how newborns who are not touched fail to thrive. Imagine your whole life physically separated from others. Absolutely. And I think that answers the question, I think, in a way that lets us see that by not having that at a very early age, to all of a sudden have that thrust upon you can be a little uncomfortable, I would imagine, So interesting. Report 2. This report was given by Lucy. When it was given is unknown, and the whereabouts in which it took place is also unknown. But she states, progress has been slow, but Sam has finally started to open up to me. However, his recollection of early childhood is confused and contradictory. He has difficulty distinguishing between genuine memories and reoccurring dreams. Sam even claims to have met his stepsister Amelie on the beach several times while quite young. An impossible claim, to say the least. I'm only a little older than Sam, but I was born before the Death Stranding, a fact that tends to affect the way we think about the beach. In my professional opinion, the beach is a figment of our collective imagination, a shared delusion. But people born later are more likely to take its existence as a given. I wonder if they find comfort in the belief because it helps to explain phenomena like BTs and repatriates like Sam. Similarly, my theory is that Sam's manufactured childhood memories of the beach are his way of coping with the fact that neither Amelie nor Bridget spent much time with him. I believe this is also the reason he still clings to the dream catcher Amelie gave him, even now as an adult. You could call it his security blanket. It may also be the key to overcoming his aphantasmophobia. If Sam were to emotionally distance himself from Amelie, it might reduce his resistance to physical intimacy. I will propose this approach to him in our next session. Okay. Interesting. So progress, obviously, she states, is being slow within this therapy session due to, I think, his resistance. And also, I mean, to be honest, you've got someone who is kind of not, for all intents purposes, not believing what you're saying, and because she was born before the Death Stranding, like she says, their belief in certain aspects of the beach and all of that seems a little far-fetched and unrealistic to them. But for Sam, this is real. It's, he has that ability, and obviously, they're born at different times, so their thought process about certain issues are going to be very different. Not much unlike how we are today. People born in different times have a different outlook on life, have a different way of thinking about certain ways of living and what's expected and how life should be, or also how society thinks that we should live our life, how certain things are mapped out in a way that this is the path in which you should follow, and hence how parents tend to parent in a way that teaches a child that this is what's expected. This is where you should go. This is the life you should lead. This is what you should choose. This is the type of partner you should have, versus, a much more open time when people are much later. And to be fair, a lot of older generations have now moved into this current uh, place in which we live and our way of thinking, and being much more open about one's sexuality or thought process, and how they choose a career path or whatever. It's not so much, oh, I want my child to grow up and follow in my footsteps, but ultimately now I think the idea is to let a child find their own path in life. You can be there to bumper them and guide them along the way, but ultimately let them find their own path. Um, so I think it's very interesting. And with this whole therapy, um, I find it's digging into Sam's life in a way that it's forcing him to come to terms with certain aspects, into, like any therapy session, I think, to look back and to try and understand and figure out why things are the way that they are. What have we got here? Memory is not perfect either. We can conflate memories, as well as what we focus on shapes how it replays in our minds. Absolutely. Those keepsakes, like the dream catcher, are definitely more than just security blankets, but it appears Lucy is looking at it at face value. It's so interesting. She sees it that way at the start. Yep. When living your life, be careful not to should on others. Okay, yeah, I suppose I think I understand what you mean. As in what you should do or what you shouldn't do. I'm assuming that that's what you mean, Jonathan. So very, very interesting. I love Death Stranding is a beautiful game. Yes, we all agree. So I think that's it's pretty fair to say uh they have a difference of opinions in how one sees their life, if you see what I mean. In terms, Sam is very much along the lines of, he talks about having met up with his sister on the beach several times while he was young, and she, to the opposite side, says that uh, that's quite impossible. That couldn't happen. Um, Interesting. Moving on to report 3. This therapy session is everything. Uh, report 3. The report is from Lucy. When it was given, unknown. Where and its whereabouts, where it took place, also unknown. And she states, it came as no surprise, but Sam was unreceptive to my suggestion and rejected my assessment of his relationship with Amelie. He asserted that he is not dependent on her or Bridget, and even went so far as to question my credentials as a psychotherapist. His pronounced resistance to the idea only serves as further evidence of his dependency. Nevertheless, there is little I can do if Sam is unwilling to explore the possibility, other than continue to share my observations and hope that he eventually changes his mind. For the time being, I've decided to focus instead on Sam's feelings towards Bridges and his place within the organization. Given that it was founded to support and protect his adoptive mother, and that the other core members have dooms like he does, I think there's something to be gained from the discussion. His growing responsibilities within Bridges, due to their expanding mandate, and his abilities as a repatriate, surely put him under great pressure. And I wonder if his enthusiasm for their mission was sincere. Based on our time spent together thus far, I believe he may have embraced his whole role because it helped him to cope with the feelings of isolation that he pledged himself to an impossible endeavor because it was preferable to living and dying alone. Um, so to be fair, no, it didn't, I think, come as a surprise to her that her suggestion had been rejected by him and regarding his relationship with Amelie. Uh, but he did claim that he's not dependent uh, on her, and I can understand and see why this would question. I think she's come out all guns a blazing in one respect, and maybe hasn't let him, be that flower to slowly open up to her in the way that maybe she thought he was going to, because I think she came hard hitting in one respect, just kind of denouncing all the things that he was saying. So he's rejected her assessment of the relationship regarding Amelie, um, and saying that he's not dependent on her or Bridget, and then therefore questioning her credentials as a psychotherapist, because it's like she's kind of, I thought the idea, in one situation in therapy is to let you come to your own conclusions, and the therapist is there to kind of guide you in a way and help support you and understand your side of things, but also give you things to think about. But I don't think that they ever tell you something is that you're wrong for thinking a certain way. Um, I don't think that they do it, but perhaps they let you come to that decision, because I think it's always great for people to, I do a lot of I chat with my friends, I do a lot of talking and speaking with people through certain situations. And it's always easier to solve other people's problems than it is to solve your own. So it's always easy when someone has a dilemma and I can talk them through it, and they come back and they go, "Oh my God, thank you so much. That was so helpful. I don't know what I would have done." And it makes me feel wonderful that I can help someone. And but at the same time, when I give advice to people, I don't say, "This is what you should do." I say, "Think about this as a possibility and try and see it from this side." Because ultimately, you have to make that decision. It is not for me to make the decision for you. You have to come to that conclusion. I can be the person to give you something to think about, and maybe suggest avenues to explore, because at the end of the day, you don't want something to come back to you and saying, "Well, this never would have happened if you hadn't told me to do it." Well, and at the same token, if people come to you for advice, if someone comes and asks for my advice, um, I think long and hard, depending on what it's regarding, about what advice I give and how I relay it to them, because I want to make it very clear that certain things you say to people can be life changing for them. And you don't want to be the reason something doesn't work, but you want to be the reason that something helps, by all means, absolutely. And just giving people something to think about. Um, so with Lucy, it's very interesting getting a sense of who she is during all of this at the moment. Um, Given that it was founded to support and protect his adoptive mother, which is obviously referring to Bridges and the other core members who have dooms uh, like he does. Um, his growing responsibility within Bridges, she's saying to think that maybe that has a lot to do. Obviously the expanding mandate and his abilities as a repatriate surely put him under great pressure, and wonder if his enthusiasm for their mission was sincere. Um, I'm not quite sure what she means by that. Uh, it, just reading it to you again, the one of these last sentences, his growing responsibilities within Bridges due to their expanding mandate and his abilities as a repatriate surely put him under great pressure. And I wonder if his enthusiasm for their mission was sincere. Based on our time spent together thus far, I believe he may have embraced his whole role because it helped him to cope with the feelings of isolation that he pledged himself to, an impossible endeavor because it was preferable to living and dying alone. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's interesting thought in that. It's good to get out of your head, but at the end of the day, it's still your head. Absolutely, 100%. Um, when living your life, be careful not to should. I mentioned that one. It's good to get out of your head. Yep. That's the real truth. Always easier to help someone else. Yeah, true. I cannot at most times apply what I advise to my friends. Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, I mean, all of those things. Happen. It's easier because when you are removed from a situation, you're not connected to it the way that person is. So therefore, it is sometimes a lot easier to share your thoughts and ideas um, from being objective. Um, but when applying it to yourself, it's kind of, getting yourself to do exactly what you say to others. And it is difficult. It's a lot easier said than done. Uh, Interesting. Moving on. This is report 4, given by Lucy, and time and place when unknown, where it was given also, once again, unknown. And she states, I decided a different approach was required, and so I requested a meeting with the president. Discretion was vital, as any information which might suggest she is receiving mental health treatment could be exploited by her opponents. The meeting was listed as an interview in official records, though I was more than willing to offer my services had they been requested. I opened by asking about Sam's childhood, to which the president responded with an immediate and heartfelt apology. Her frankness shocked me, I must confess. She expressed deep regret for her failure to engage with him, physically and emotionally, as she felt a mother should. At times, it felt as though she was apologizing to her son by proxy. Her candor was as impressive as it was appreciated. The president told me that her daughter Amelie had mostly taken care of Sam in her absence. She glossed over the details, but she divulged that Amelie also has dooms and claimed that she would often take Sam with her to play on the beach. Interestingly, President Strand suggested that their time spent together there may be related to his current condition. So, Sam and Amelie as kids on the beach, and Bridget's lack of time spent with him as a kid, as a child. Uh, and so, obviously, during the course of their childhood, Emily obviously spent the most time with him and took him to the beach regularly. Um, so it was like that sister thing where the parent isn't around, but there was someone, who was always there to look after you. Um, and I do understand the beginning of this when they're saying that, it's the discretion of having this meeting was vital because clearly she's known as a therapist, I imagine. Uh, and any information that might suggest she's having or receiving any kind of mental health treatment could be exploited by her opponents. That's typical. People use anything they can against you. Um, so they obviously listed it as an interview on the official records. So she's saying that Bridget expressed deep regret for her failure to engage with him physically and emotionally, as she felt a mother should. Um, and I suppose that's very difficult. I mean, some women are able to juggle that very difficult line, between working and and spending time with your children. Now, granted, there's times are very different. These times are very different. And for whatever reason, we all know Bridget, I think, had a very focused and determined goal in mind. And although she is the adoptive mother of Sam, I don't think that was going to be anything to deter her from, completing her mission in, rebuilding America, the Reconstructionism, and all of that. But come on, give the kids something. Give him a little something. Everybody needs a little bit of love, y'all. Um, you know, so I get she's like, it's one thing to express the regret. And she's saying that her candor was impressive and appreciated. Well, okay, so she gave you information basically so you could hopefully do your job, um, hopefully the right way. Uh, and obviously she felt, because she thought that all this therapy would help with his aphenphosmphobia, that was the whole reason for this therapy session. So in actual fact, maybe had Bridget Strand realized that the aphenphosmphobia was a result of his neglect, I suppose, for want of a better word, that maybe had she tried herself over time to slowly reach to him, maybe she herself could have helped to resolve it, but when someone grows through something, maybe her explaining to him why he is the way he is. I don't know if she's ever done that. I love how we discuss these people like they are real, but to us, they're real, living in this world. But, maybe she has a lot to answer for in a lot of ways, that maybe she could have rectified this by looking at herself through all of it. What do you guys think? Um, do as I say, not as I do. So there was time spent on the beach after all. On the whole, times are changing for the best. One step back, two steps forward. Yeah, absolutely. Bridget has some splaining to do. Maybe she shouldn't have shot Sam's dad. Yeah, I love the thank you, Victor, for the spoiler alert. Yeah, so very interesting again, let's head into report 5. Uh, what do we got? She performed her mother duties as Amelie. Interesting. Report 5 from Lucy. Report date and time unknown. Where it takes place also unknown. And she states, President Strand loves her son. My meeting with her confirmed this beyond any doubt. The question, I believe, is whether or not Sam perceived his mother's love. Both Sam and the president talk about the beach as though it were a real physical place. But I remain convinced that it does not exist, that it is a shared delusion, and that Sam and Amelie's so-called visits are mental constructs. Sam would not necessarily be of this, especially if it had been planted in his mind. Such an explanation would fit with his claims that he has never been able to visit the beach of his own volition. What if, subconsciously, Sam has developed an attachment to or longing for the beach, one that parallels his feelings towards his sister and mother? Furthermore, what if they have all become, in essence, objects of veneration? Excuse me. Upon further consideration, it is not so hard to imagine. President Strand is an exceptional woman who exhibits pan-romantic qualities, as does her daughter Amelie. This is surely one of the reasons why they have been able to commit themselves so completely to the cause of American Reconstruction, their one true love. Sam, on the other hand, I have diagnosed as demisexual. His sexual desires are strictly limited to those with whom he has formed an emotional connection, except family members like Amelie, of course. It is only natural to more highly regard those with whom he develops intimate emotional connection. For children, this can lead to veneration. Yet there is also an inherent contradiction in this, for divinity is distant by nature, even as we yearn to grow closer to it. I have come to the conclusion that this contradiction is at the root of Sam's aphanphosmphobia. Okay. So she's saying that by having met with Bridget, uh, she knows that without a shadow of a doubt, Bridget loves her son. Okay. Uh, and meeting her confirmed this. The question, she says, is whether or not Sam perceived that. So, look, you can love a child, a friend, a person, a lover. You can love them, but my my mother had a saying back in the day saying, ways and action prove satisfaction. And there is truth in that. Your actions speak louder than words, because you can say that you love someone, and there's no doubt that she got a sense that Bridget does love her son. But whether Sam perceived it is purely based on the actions that were presented to him. So if there was no affection, if there was no touching, if there was no any of that going on, then his perception of Bridget's love would have been skewed, would it not? In the sense that, people can say you love me, I love you, I love you, I love you. But sometimes not getting that hug or that kiss or that look in the eye and say, how much I appreciate you and love you and squeeze you. So I can understand how his perception could possibly have been what it was. But then she goes on to say, but she remains convinced that the beach doesn't exist. Um, and thinking that maybe was this planted in his mind. She's saying because if it was, then this would explain the claims that he's never been able to visit the beach by himself. Is it just a figment of his imagination? Is it a dream? Because of the fact that you can't do it by yourself, maybe the fact that you're using a dreamlike state or something else, which makes her think that this is, because you can't do it by yourself, this can't be real, possibly. And then subconsciously saying that, maybe that he developed this attachment or this longing for the beach, which also parallels his feelings towards his mother and sister. It's interesting. Also, she says that, Bridget's a very exceptional woman. Pan-romantic qualities, saying that this is one of the reasons why they have been able to commit themselves so completely to the cause of American Reconstruction. Okay. And then we hit on to demisexual. Limited to those. So the definition, someone who only feels sexual attraction to someone only once they've become emotionally bonded. So, demisexual, someone who only feels sexual attraction to someone only once they've become emotionally bonded. And some of the signs of someone who is demisexual, or it certainly is listed. Um, Someone who is not fan of physical touch. Uh, might grow feeling difficult. Emotional bonds are important to them. Um, and demisexuals apparently only enjoy sex under specific circumstances. Um, and they've often been labeled or dubbed as prudes. Um, so it's interesting how they define it, uh, because some of those things do, I think, relate to Sam's characteristics. Um, the game itself talks about the bonds we have, and how important those things are. Um, Enjoying sex under specific circumstances, that could be for a lot of different reasons. Um, Being dubbed as prudes, which is kind of, I don't think is real, in the sense, in my opinion, to say that people who are demisexuals are prudes. I don't think that is the case. And they may not be extroverts or outgoing or sexually uninhibited, per se, but they're not fans of physical touch. But there is also maybe that the fans of not fans of physical touch is the same connection to the aphenphosmphobia thing. Uh, and also, for anyone who wasn't aware, the veneration was a word that cropped up quite a bit, um, in this particular report, meaning great respect and reverence. Veneration. Uh, And that came in the sentence, furthermore, what if they have all become, in essence, objects of veneration? So, in that sense, great respect, reverence. Uh, what are your thoughts on that? What have we got? Standing. When Lucy later on realized that she beach is true, the heartbreak begins. Yes, I love that she is coming at it from a pre-stranding mindset. Yeah, and she most definitely is. Most definitely is. Hello, people just came home. Hey, be mindful. Welcome. Sapiosexuals are attracted to brainiacs. They are bonding with the emotional side of humanity. Thank you for that. What a subject to dive into. Yeah. I'm a ludensexual, only attracted to ludens. Thank you, Corinne Fox. Those who like to play, I take it. Yeah, there you go. Be mindful. So it is interesting, and I see how the demisexual and the aphenphosmphobia are connected in that respect. Um, Interesting. Moving on to report 6. From Lucy, time and place, date unknown, where it took place also unknown. And she states in this report, I decided to share with Sam my working theory regarding his condition. I was prepared for some resistance, but the intensity of his anger was surprising. He glared at me as he refrained from my assessment as wild speculation that he had been brainwashed by a cult. It was the first time I'd managed to coax from him such a powerful emotional response. While I found it a little frightening, I did my best to remain professional, welcoming the breakthrough, the reduction in the distance between us. That was how I presented myself. But in retrospect, a part of me was delighted by his aggressive response. Sam stated that he is a repatriate. I challenged him and said that repatriation was nothing more than a fiction used to explain the phenomenon of near-death experiences, one that makes use of the equally fictional beach. Emboldened, I pressed him further until I finally told him to snap out of it, to renounce his fantasies about the other side. For an instant, I thought he might explode in anger again. But instead, he grew quiet, and after a long moment, rose to his feet and left the room without saying another word. I fear I may have pushed him too hard. You think? Uh, so, Lucy believes that repatriation, once again, is nothing more than fiction. So this is, for all intents and purposes, to me, it seems like this would be just a losing battle, because she's completely on the other side of the fence with this. And to be honest, there is nothing worse. Well, there could be, but sometimes I feel like there's nothing worse than when someone doesn't believe you. When you have an experience, and regardless of what that experience is, or how that experience came about, or that it comes across as something that is unbelievable, phenomenal, unrealistic to someone else's eyes, ears, or opinions about it. Not being believed can be soul destroying, because it is in some respects attacking one's character, an assassination of one's uh, honest and belief. Now, granted, listen, there's a lot of things that can uh, a person can say that someone else won't believe. You have to take a lot of things into consideration. Sometimes you have to take a person's track record uh, into consideration. Also, you have to take into consideration what this truth is that they're speaking. It may mean having to investigate in order to find out the truth. Uh, and sometimes people just don't want to believe something uh, for various reasons. They might not want to believe it because it would be a reflection on them, depending upon what that is. They might not want to believe it because they let something happen and they knew about it, um, but turned a blind eye. So therefore, and that happens a lot with people. Now, this can be for a multitude of things, but not being believed by something that you are speaking, your honest to God's truth. It's, what can I do to get you to believe that what I'm saying is true? That's hard. That's a hard one. And there's an emotion attached to that, because for, like I said, there's a whole list of things, situations that could occur that you're trying to get someone to believe you. And there are those people who are uh chronic chronic liars, in a sense that you kind of go, okay, I just don't. And so when the point comes where their track record has been so bad that when something does actually happen, you know, people turn a blind eye to it because they go, "Oh, this is just another one of your fantasies, another one of your, mental delusions that you've created by yourself, uh, due to your nature or your participation in drugs or occult or whatever." So when you truly need someone to believe you, they're not there because you haven't given them anything along the way to think otherwise. So that can be hard. um but she obviously pushed him to a point uh where he loses it. um But for her, she thought that was a breakthrough because she was getting some kind of a response. I think in times past, he had been sitting quietly, although when he did share something, she didn't believe it. Uh, so she tried to remain professional, welcoming the breakthrough, and saying that she was delighted with his aggressive response. But challenging him on the repatriation side of things was once again something I think where he just kind of gone, you know what? For that reason, I'm out. Uh, you know, and he just, without blowing up, he just gets up and quietly walks out without saying anything. Uh, and just kind of thought, well, there's no point, so I'm just going to leave this. I'm going to leave it alone. Um, so very interesting, very interesting. What have we got? Sorry you didn't really die. I don't make the rules. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a pseudo attraction. You can also allocate wisdom and experience to it. Yep. Well, the boy who cried wolf and all that. Absolutely. Lady, shoot me in the chest and tell me I'm delusional. Yeah. I guess she hadn't seen Sam's belly scar. True, but I think you just like their personality at that point. She invalidated everything that Sam went through. Absolutely. Assassinated the character. What a cruel way of describing the change of mind and heart. I'd love to get some logs of Lucy talking with Hartman about his mission. Empirical evidence that can be presented to make someone change his or her mind, that it's better to ask the other way. Ask why that person believes the other way, and then give your perspective experience. Yeah, absolutely. So what I hear you saying is, Hartman, about so I think that there is, you have to tread carefully with stuff like that. Moving on to report 7. Report 7, given by Lucy, time and place, date unknown, whereabouts it took place unknown. And she writes or states, oh God, where to begin? Sam turned up for his appointment today, right on time. I remember he looked calmer than usual, though that might have been wishful thinking. He'd been thinking a lot about our last session and how it had ended. He said he wished I was right about the beach and what it meant to be a repatriate. That he appreciated the time we'd spent together, that I'd spent listening to his stories. And then he pulled out a syringe. He was still so calm, though at that point, I sure wasn't. He said it wasn't all in his head and that he could prove it. And then he stuck the needle in his chest. I mean, it all happened so fast. I froze in my chair as he went into convulsions. Eventually, falling out of his seat, I ran to him. Then, as he was laying on the floor, motionless, I removed the syringe and performed chest compressions. But it was too late. I sat there next to him for what felt like an eternity. And then he opened his eyes and sat up, still wearing that same calm expression. There was another handprint on his arm, a fresh one, left by the dead. He told me before. I'm a repatriate, he said. Every time I die, I get stuck in between and then come back. He was searching my eyes now, reaching for the words as much as they were struggling to come out. The world won't have me. Sorry, that world won't have me. And neither will this one. I'm only free to come and go when I'm with her. with Amelie. So that last quote from him, when he sits up, he was saying that every time I go, I get stuck between and then I come back. But the fact that he said, she could see that he was searching for the words as much as they were struggling to come. And then he says, that world won't have me, and neither will this one. I'm only free to come and go when I'm with her, with Amelie. So what a shock it must have been for her to have him come back to the session after having left, and to be calm, all the while knowing what he's planning to do. I'm sure of it. He'd been thinking about our last session and how it ended. He said that he wished I was right about the beach and what it meant to be a repatriate, and that he appreciated the time we spent together and that I'd spent listening to his stories. So he prefaced it by saying how much he appreciated it. And then he pulls out the syringe to go, okay, this is the luxury one has, I think, in the position. If you can prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that what you are saying is 100% categorically true, people are going to have to buy it. They will. And so his only way was to come back to this session prepared with a syringe, and do the deed before her very eyes. Take that. And also to come back with the handprint on his arm, a fresh one. When that is presented to you, how can you not see it? You still might be skeptical, but I mean, this was done right before your very eyes. There's no, what is this sorcery you do? So he proves he's a repatriate, and also the potential connection between, we start to maybe see this potential connection that they now start to have. And let me continue on, because there's a second part to this. So after the world won't have me and neither will this one, I'm only free to come and go when I am with her, with Amelie. There were tears in his eyes. He looked so lonely. So I started crying too. I'd taken his hand in mine without realizing it. But he didn't pull away. I squeezed, and he squeezed back. He needs someone he can be close to, be intimate with, someone outside of his family, someone who isn't Bridget or Amelie, someone to whom he can reveal the whole of himself, someone who will devote themselves to him. Me. I don't remember what I said, but I remember that he nodded, that he smiled, that we held each other for a long, long time. And there it begins. There it begins. What are your thoughts? Thanks for joining. Game Logger, you made it. Which journal are we on? We are on report 7. She's about to get the wool pulled from her eyes. So awesome. Sam wanted to leave. Absolutely no room for confirmation. Well said. Hello. 01 Solace. A strange but beautiful love story. Yeah, and so it's interesting. Sorry that got broken up. I got so sidetracked with what had happened with that line, because I thought it was so poignant that I didn't carry on with the rest of that. So that second part of that, which was very important, because that is where that relationship starts to forge to begin, I believe. Um, and that they held each other for a long, long time, which was an incredible breakthrough, considering he has aphenphosmphobia, to be able to hold each other during that and not uh, feel anything differently um, in terms of the touch. So, moving on to 8, because it gets better. Report 8 given by Lucy, time and date unknown, whereabouts where it took place also unknown. A few days after the incident in my office, I tendered my resignation. A classic case of countertransference, the therapist getting emotionally involved with their client. And there was no way my professional pride would permit me to continue working. I felt guilty, of course. There's a permanent shortage of therapists, and many of my clients will struggle to find help elsewhere. But after what happened with Sam, I didn't see any other option. To be honest, I've already come to terms with it. What I'm doing for Sam more than makes up for it. I'd never normally use this word, but I really do believe his aphenphosmphobia has been cured. He's shown so much progress that, absent an extremely traumatic experience, I doubt his symptoms will ever return. To my surprise, the president didn't have any problems with our relationship. If anything, she was pleased. I suppose this means I'll soon be joining the Strand family, together with this new life growing inside of me. Well, so my first reaction after reading that was, well, that was fast. Um, you know, Lucy's pregnant, so it seems. And how long was it from that incident that in the office that this discovery of her pregnancy? Obviously, she gave her resignation, um, and clearly her response to curing his aphenphosmphobia, which she says she thinks has been completely cured, has a lot to do with their emotional connection with each other. So therefore, I think that, and it's that client, doctor, therapist, proving, that some lines were crossed during this, for whatever reasons. Um, so it was in that previous one where, they held each other for a long time. Uh, so she's saying it was only a few days after that incident in her office that she gave her resignation. Um, and saying that her professional pride wouldn't allow her to continue working because she felt guilty for it. And because of what happened with Sam, she didn't have any other option. And the president didn't have any problems with it. So do we think that there was a possibility that after that long embrace, that a sexual relation ship that they had sex at that moment, was it one of those tear off your clothes kind of moments, where they realize this is a breakthrough? I don't know. But clearly they did. Otherwise, she wouldn't be pregnant. So my thing is, how long, are we to presume how much time came into place, which I'm sure we will discover as we move on. What were your thoughts here? It is a strange but beautiful love story. Beautiful love story until the dooms induce nightmares. Eek, yeah. Her dreams are our nightmares. So just too cute for Lucy. Sam said everything I touch, I lose. She knows it's cured, all right. She's done the research. Okay, very, very professional. Our boy Sam delivers. How do we know the president was okay with it all? Um, well, do we? Or she must have been okay to some degree to sort of uh I don't know. I suppose because there's that family picture that we've seen. That doesn't necessarily mean she's okay with it, but can we presume that maybe because she thinks that Sam is happy, that makes her happy? Possibly, possibly. Um, you know, who can say? But yeah, I think now that we know the next phase of their relationship, in which she's going to have Sam's baby. Moving on to report 9. Let's see where we go. From Lucy, time and place, date unknown, where it takes place also unknown once again. And she states, "Our baby is doing well. We've been told we're having a girl. Sam's already picked out a name for her. Louise. Lou, he likes to call her. He talks to her a lot, touching my stomach, telling her to grow big and strong. Bridget was delighted when she found out and suggested that we take a family photograph. Amelie was out of town, so it was just the 3 of us, blushing, smiling. And that same blush, that same smile when we received the printout, along with apologies for being old-fashioned, there was a funny little message on it. Be stranded with love. Handwritten and signed. It's unique now. You can't digitize or copy it. I'll always remember those words and that moment forever." Okay. Uh, so the baby's doing well. Sam, they've picked out a name, Louise, Lou. We know who that is. Uh, So she's saying that Bridget once again was delighted when she found out about the pregnancy, and suggested that they take a family photo. That photo has come to be the iconic picture that we see with pregnant Lucy and Sam and Bridget. Uh, and also that quote, "Be stranded with love." You know, uh, what can you say? I feel like there's still something about it, the connection, how this relationship became what it became. Um, and I want to think that it was genuine, but I'm not sure that her intentions uh were honest in the beginning. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. What are you guys thinking? She went on the picture with them. That's my Sam, always delivering the package at the right moment, at the right place. Bridget was delighted too. So okay, seems all was well then. Uh, yeah, yeah. We'll see. I think that she was, to a degree. Always remember those words in that moment forever. Okay, let's hit 10. Uh, report 10 from Lucy, unknown time and date, where it took place, once again unknown. And she states in this: Little Lou's 28 weeks old now. The doctor just checked us both out and said we're doing fine. But I'm not so sure. Lately, I've been having the same terrible dream every night. I open my eyes and I'm all alone on the beach. I'm lonely and afraid, so I start wandering around looking for someone, anyone. I spot Sam and Amelie standing at the water's edge, their backs to me. Relieved, I call out to them. Her hair shimmers in the gray light, but when she turns, it's her mother's face, twisted with sadness and pain. She speaks and says, "I'll be waiting for you on the beach." And I scream. I scream so loud. So one of the nightmares begin. So little Lou is 28 weeks old now. So it's what, 7 months. The doctor checked him out. Everybody's doing fine except for these dreams and nightmares that Lucy's having. So is she having a dream? Are these nightmares? Or is she going to the beach? We shall find out. So it's very interesting that now what was once accused of being unreal, that the possibility that even within these nightmares, which can sometimes seem very realistic, has possibly changed her in some way. Because now she's experiencing what Sam has experienced, albeit what she states is a nightmare, but she's getting a glimpse into his world. Let's move on to 11. Report from Lucy, time, date unknown, where it takes place, details are unknown. And she states in the report, "Everything's gone wrong. I didn't understand at the time. I was a therapist, a good one, but even I couldn't make sense of the nightmares or what was happening to me. Bridget came to visit the other day. 'They're not nightmares,' she said. I hadn't told her yet. I felt Lou stirring inside me as she continued. She said that she was sorry, that she hadn't known it would happen. Lou's special. She said that a lot. Lou had Sam's blood, and through her, I was bound to the beach. Don't be afraid." She said that a lot too. "I cured Sam, made him whole, given him a life to live for, to protect, made him a part of this world." She had a lot to say about that, about how the world was a jumbled mess, life and death all mixed up, but that Sam, my Sam, might be the one to make it whole again, like I'd made him whole. Without him, our fate was sealed. But with him, there was still hope for a future. And then she told me I was right. The beach exists within each of our minds. But that didn't mean it was just a figment of our imagination. It had value, purpose, and in time, I would understand. She took my hand like I'd taken his on that day a lifetime ago. She smiled and squeezed. I was there on the beach. Everything I had seen in my nightmares, I saw in that instant. Somewhere inside me, Lou was laughing, and then it all fell into place. Sam's birth, his family, the Death Stranding. For the first time, I saw how all the pieces fit into a terrible truth I didn't want to believe, but couldn't deny. I saw my part in it too, and little Lou's. Those funny little words on the picture. Be stranded with love. Dun, dun, dun. Wow. Ever consider, if you have there any books, your place would be superb for it. Thank you. Hello from Norway. Thanks, John. So she was right. at the top of this. Everything's gone wrong. It's all been shot to shit, man. Uh, and the discovery is that these are not nightmares, my dear. Nor are they dreams. Um, Thanks to Lou, you too can go to the beach. Um, and yes, she was partially right, um, that the beach exists within each of our minds, but that didn't mean it was a figment of our imagination. It had value and purpose, and in time she would understand. And yes, she did. Um, uh, and she says that what Bridget says a lot of, don't be afraid. She says that a lot. Um, there is, she says that, and also Lucy says, I cured Sam. I made him whole, given him a life to live for, to protect, made him a part of this world. And to some degree, I suppose she did. Maybe, they managed to have a life together, to be able to have a child and, have this love. But what do we think the phrase means? Be stranded with love. Any thoughts on that? What is your interpretation of that line? Be stranded with love. Yeah, you get the picture. Bridget knows what is about to happen. Yeah. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. Be stranded with love. So, and because of Lou, Lucy's able to connect to the beach. What she thought was a dream is all real. Groovy Snake, it means enjoy life while it lasts. I like that. Be stranded with love. Be bounded by love. Yeah. I mean, it's very powerful. And it's, in connection with the game, I love how we've tied the word strand in with this, because it can have multiple meaning, I suppose. Stranded on the beach. And if you're going to be stranded on the beach, be stranded on the beach with those that you love. Because for all intents and purposes, those who've passed on, into the other world, who aren't able to come back, who are not repatriates. Maybe they are stranded there with love. Interesting. I think we got a lot of different ways we can look at that. Be mindful. Be stranded with love is to always have sufficient self-appreciation. Cool. The final report from Lucy. Left in a place where you are helpless. The mighty Quint. To be stranded, left in a place where you are helpless. Yeah, I mean, stranded is that. To be stranded somewhere is to be stuck, isn't it? So moving on. Report 12, the final one, folks. It's from Lucy. It is, the time and the date is unknown, and where it takes place is also unknown. And it states, you'll have questions, and I wish I had all the answers, but I don't. I only hope that this will help you to understand. Lou's kicking woke me up. I was alone, still half asleep, so everything around me looked askew. That all too familiar feeling of the waking and dreaming being tangled up. But you and Bridget and Amelie leave even more muddled lives, don't you? A reality between life and death, between this world and the next. Because of all this chaos and confusion beyond imagination stranded on our shore, there are pills on the table next to me that I just took all at once. I've tried to make sense of it, but this was never my world. I was born into an older one without a beach, where the dead stayed buried and life moved on. Damn it, I am shaking so hard. I don't think the drugs are working. I've got some syringes loaded with sedatives. Enough, I think. I'm going to use them, one after another, until I run out. I love you, Sam. I'll always love you. So, as tragic as all of that is, it seems to me that her biggest concern that she had was not wanting to lead that type of life. Being born before the Death Stranding, where a beach didn't exist to her, that side of the world didn't exist. And if it did, they had no knowledge of it. But because she was born into an older world, one without the beach, her thing was that the dead should stay dead. Once they've gone and crossed over, I don't need to see them anymore until I'm dead, basically. And so are we to believe that that was the turning point for her? That was the straw that broke the camel's back, that she could no longer live like that? Because there was no way, I think, for her not to, because even carrying, it was because of Lou's connection. She's carrying Lou. But would that have changed after she'd given birth to Lou? You know, because they wouldn't be bound by that connection by carrying the child. But would the DNA have an effect still on her? Would she still be able to go to the beach? If she'd gone through the process of giving birth and not committing suicide, would she in turn have been able to lead her normal life and then be able to deal with all of that that side of stuff? It's an interesting thought. What are you guys thinking? To be stranded in leftovers place of hell. I wish we had exposition on Lucy and Sam's interaction. Some more drama wouldn't have hurt the game. Wouldn't have hurt the game. It would even empower Sam more as the protagonist. Game Largo, have you read the interview called From the Report on the Void Out in Manhattan? It talks about the void out that was caused when Lucy died and a doctor tried to perform a C-section to save Lou. Yes, so we did that, Game Largo. I think we hit on that in some previous interviews about that particular void out. Because I think he cut the umbilical cord, or there was something that happened with that particular surgeon who performed that C-section. Tommy, what you're doing is simply astonishing. I just want to thank you for the Joy to the Word initiative as a general. May God bless you and keep you with the same energy in future projects. Oh, thank you very much, WVN Gamer. That's very kind of you. Thank you. The interesting thing is that the doctor's last words were, "Who the hell?" What I want to know is who did he see? She wanted to live in blissful ignorance, I guess. Yeah, so it's interesting, all of that. And I think it was definitely an insight that you don't get. And so these interviews have been great. I mean, we've got one episode left. I'm just going to have a couple minutes just to have a chat because that was the end of episode 9, people. That was the end of episode 9, Lucy's Reports. But it definitely gives an insight to how that relationship came to be, how Sam thought about it, and Bridget, I would love to have learned more about it. And I suppose there's only so much you can do. Kojima was amazing because there is so much backstory with all of this. And even when I worked on it, I was given so much backstory and history about where things came to be, things that you don't necessarily see in the game, but things that were very beneficial for me as the actor to know in order to interpret the character that I came up with. So having all of this information, I mean, I didn't have this information, but certain things about Die Hardman, et cetera, and his relationship to other people. So I think all that stuff is wonderful to have, and it's great that it's in the game and you kind of have to unlock it along the way. But I have enjoyed, and even though we're not finished, I've got one more episode to do, and then we will be completely done. But it has been very insightful for me. So I also think going back and playing the game, because I already know what happens, it will be interesting to go back with a different mindset, knowing how I feel about certain things, and having a little bit of information. Maybe certain things won't be confusing for me, and maybe I can approach things differently. So I look forward to that. I don't know when I'll get a chance to play the game, but hopefully I will. So there you have it. What are the comments that we got? She went the same way as Higgs, couldn't cope with the new world. Difference is she tried to take it out on herself rather than others. Still turned herself into a bomb, though. Yeah. 385. Thank you for doing these. Finally managed to catch a live stream. Glad I caught up on this video in time. Thank you for joining. Krauser, very nice stream. Thank you. Vic Ross, wasn't the Manhattan incident before Sam was born? I'd have to double check. I think it possibly. But there was that C-section situation. But maybe that was at a different time. Awesome as always. Thank you. Would love to hear more about your work with Kojima and the process of making the game as a VL. There's quite a few interviews that I've done that you might find on YouTube, so you might be able to find some information where I do talk a lot more about it. The universe never stops to surprise me in the richness and mystery. Would you ever consider doing a couple live streams playing the game? I have thought about it, but I'm a little not as tech savvy, as you can see by my streams and how I deal with them. Because I'm always so busy. I haven't set up anything like that. I'm sure I would love to be able to do something like that, and maybe I will in the future. Who knows? And things will progress and get better. Dear Lord, I can't wait to play the director's cut. Well, you've only got 4 days left. In the end, Sam regressed back to to who he was before falling in love with Lucy. Yes, Tommy, the Twitch streamer. Let's go. So I will say this. Firstly, thank you for joining me on this, the penultimate episode of Joy to the Word, the Death Stranding edition. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it. Just so you know, and I will put a post out on my social media platforms, that the final episode of Joy to the Word, the Death Stranding edition, will be on Wednesday. So you only have to wait 1 day more. You've got Tuesday tomorrow, and then I'm going to do the final one on Wednesday so that it does finish before the release of the director's cut, which was my goal. It was going to be either Wednesday or Thursday, but I think I'm going to finish it on Wednesday, have a breather on Thursday, and see how people get on with the release on Friday. So yes, so as a reminder, shout it out. If you're on social media, let people know that this final episode will be on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And also the final interviews. We've got Die Hardman's background 1 and 2, and then basically a section entitled Other, which basically is just different interviews from various people. And that will close out the entire series, the finale. So it'll be a little bittersweet. But let me go ahead and say thank you guys so much for joining me. And I have enjoyed this so much. I won't go too deep into it because we still got the final one to do. But thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the discussion. As always, your comments, please share and go back and revisit. And hopefully this will be something that you can come back to and have a little reread or re-listen to. Thank you for all your support as always. And with that said, please have a great start to your week. This was Monday and not Friday, so the week is just beginning. So please, I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead. Do send me messages, reach out to me, let me know what's going on. And get ready for Friday, the 24th, the release of Death Stranding, the director's cut. I hope you all enjoy it. Once again, thank you, a million thank yous, and a million likes to all of you. Stay blessed and keep on keeping on. All right, take care.